get my microphone. Oops, daisies. There it is. What's up, everybody? How's it going? I guess I'm still getting used to a boom mic rather than a condenser on an arm rather than my nice headset microphone. What's up, everybody? How's it going? It's Tuesday. We're getting tactical for Tactical Tuesday. That's pretty sick. Hope everyone's having a good one. I'm just going to make sure real quick here that I don't have any random tabs open and they're going to play Papa John's ads. No, I think we're good. I think we're okay. So, nailed it. Bit of a chilled stream today, I think. Our invitational streaming. If you haven't caught that, go ahead and look at it, but it's friggin' super cool. We've got some super sweet games from the invitational this season for T5S2. We run biannual invitationals and pick the top 16 players from the T5S2 series. This season was about 350 people, and we cut that down to just 16, which is pretty sick. But that's where basically all my energy for the last 2 weeks have been going. So I'm a little streamed out right now, chat. So I didn't put a ton of preparation into this one. I'm just going to hang out and talk. I played some games over the weekend with the new Nephilim rules, post-data slate update, all that stuff. And we have like 2 weeks of competitive lists to go over because we didn't do that last week. We just talked about T5S2 Invitational. So, man, it is going to be, I think, a pretty good episode. I'm psyched. Are we talking ATC or singles events today? Just singles events. I don't really know anything about ATC, to be perfectly honest. So team events, I don't know. Part of it is that it's hard to look at them in the BCP app, so I actually don't end up reviewing their lists. Is the thing with team events, because if I'm in the app, I don't know how to open team lists. Is that embarrassing? Is that an embarrassing thing to admit to everyone? Probably, right? But the team events are also just like it's such an entirely different metagame than a singles event that it's kind of incomparable, because your team composition is going to be very different than a 1v1 composition, and I would say probably 90% of the competitive community doesn't actually interact with team events that much. So I don't know how much people are interested in that content, but I could do deep dives on team stuff if people want to. But it is what it is. Yeah, hope everyone's having a good one. I've been a couple PSAs, I guess. Obviously, lots of T5S2 stuff going on. If you want to watch the VODs of the streams, they're all on the YouTube channel right now, just like where this one's going. And I highly recommend it. Also, in order to kind of fill space between doing T5S2 streams, because I haven't been able to do regular content because of all the streaming, I have been doing shorts for the last couple of days. So I've been doing like one short a day. And right now I've been covering individual units in 40k and talking about like their lore plus mechanics and how they kind of mesh together. And I think it's been doing really well. Less so on YouTube, but I posted them to TikTok and my TikTok account blew up. So they're all at like 15k views right now, which is kind of crazy compared to how they're doing on YouTube. But if you want to go check those out, I highly recommend you check out my shorts playlist on YouTube. I'm having a great time with it. I hope that people like them and start watching them because I would like to do more. And I think if we made it a regular thing, that would be super sick. But otherwise, it's just mostly just filling time. Anyway, chat. Should we talk about... I'll talk about my games real quick first, because I think there's like a good segue between that and talking about the meta as a whole. I won't do a super in-depth breakdown of my games because for the most part they were pretty samey. But that is not my fault. That's the fault of the metagame. But I played Tyranids, obviously, because I don't know how to play anything else. I'm not very smart or good at Warhammer. I played a kind of a variation on the High Fleet Kraken list that I've been playing recently. So previously, I've focused mostly on Raveners and Warriors, and I played a list, at least on stream a couple times, that had Swarmlord in it to buff Raveners with full rerolls and OBSEC, and then they would jet across the table with opportunistic advance. They could move 20 and then charge and then take people's objectives away, and it was like pretty cool. It was basically like kind of hard primary objective control. I was finding more and more, and mostly against Chaos Space Marines, which are like kind of the new hotness, that the Raveners in a lot of matchups were kind of just blank garbage. They were like a delivery system for buffs and long movement, but they didn't really do that much when they got there, and especially against a lot of stuff like Armor of Contempt and high wound counts and good saves. Like the Raveners would just hit them, they would kill like 2 models and then just get vaporized. A lot of it, I think, was the fact that Warriors get access to a -1 damage strat, and Raveners don't. They just have the -1 to be hit, which oftentimes doesn't matter because a lot of stuff is full rerolls. But I don't know. I also think the Ravener profile wasn't really doing me that much good, so I shifted away from them. And in order to try to counter a lot of the lists we've been seeing more recently, specifically Heretic Astartes, #1, and to a lesser extent Necrons, I built a list that had 3 units of Zoanthropes in it. I ended up paring that back. It was triple Zoanthropes plus Tyrannocyte to fit 2 Zoanthrope units in, plus double Neurothrope. And I really liked the core, but I didn't... 3 Zoanthropes is too many. If you hit matchups where psychic powers aren't that great, you just have like a quarter of your army in this boat of psychic powers that aren't doing any good. So I ended up cutting it back to 2 Zoanthrope units and 2 Neurothropes, cut the drop pod, cut the Estra unit, and basically put more warriors in. So the full list, there's a link in the description and !list, list singular in the chat will get you there as well. I ended up cutting it back to the 2 Neurothropes. One with Synaptic Tendrils, who's my my buff bot guy. The other one with the Resonance Barb for +1 to cast. So he just Warp Siphons himself all day, gets his +2 to cast because of Resonance Barb, and just Psychically interrogates all game. In the matchups where you don't need Psychic Interrogation, he just smites plus screams every turn and like pings somebody for 5 mortal wounds, and that's fine. For 100 points in a CP, that dude's actually sick. So I think I'm like sold on double Neurothrope, actually. The more I've been considering like a more off-the-wall list to take different HQs, the less I'm excited about it, because I'd have to cut a Neurothrope, and I'm like, oh, I like him. I have the Maw-Claw Hive Tyrant because I like that guy, and then 3 units of Warriors, 2 of 6 with double Venom Cannons, 1 of 5 with a single Venom Cannon, all of them with Adrenal Glands. The 5 Gene Stealers, which I think are kind of a staple now, especially because of the interaction with Recover the Relics and Warzone Nephilim. So if you don't know, Recover the Relics is a mission where it's 1.1, where if you don't hold one of the center objectives that's not in your deployment zone on the first turn, or on the start of any turn, you do not get your battle round CP, or your turn CP, the Battle Forge CP bonus for that turn. Which means if you don't have forward deploy, you lose it, and you go second, you lose out on it in your opponent's turn, and then also in your turn. So you end up playing 2 CP down from your opponent. And that's brutal. Gene Stealers are a pretty okay unit to begin with, because they're just fine. They just do fine stuff. But for the off chance that you hit that mission and you don't want to get absolutely plowed on secondaries, then it's good to have them around. But also they're good at actions. Like if you can forward deploy them in a pretty safe spot, and then like they shuffle over to your opponent's side of the table and do a Retrieve Noctman data or a Nephilim data, that's fine. They can also, they can score Engage on Friends for a turn. They can movement block if your opponent has a lot of vehicles and stuff like that. I just think Gene Stealers are good. There's 1 unit of Venomthropes, 1 unit of Zoanthropes in the free slot, and then 1 in the elite slot. Not that it makes a difference. Plus Tyrant Guard and Tyranid Prime up in the no force order slot. A big unit of Raveners. So I kept 1 Ravener unit around just to have the option to have a fast unit. And I think 1 kind of feels like the sweet spot, where if you want to be able to punish your opponent for like lightly defending an objective. So if they only have 1 or 2 units on that objective, and the Raveners can just bust in and kill everyone and run away, and you steal the objective from them, that's great. So it's good to have a Ravener squad there, and if you don't have the Ravener squad, there's nothing. Like, you don't have any recourse. Plus a unit of Sky Slasher Swarms, which are just pretty good. I very much liked them. So that's the list I've been running currently. I really like it, I think. Mortal Wounds are kind of, I think, at a premium right now. I think Mortal Wounds may be the most valuable they've been in a really long time, mostly because of Heretic Astartes and because of Necrons. If Sororitas get more popular, they might be less so, because, Sororitas have a lot of cheap profiles, but also a ton of denies. So if you Boxcar's a Super Smite with his own Zoanthrope unit, and you're like, this is going to be awesome, I'm about to plow somebody for 9 Mortal Wounds, they're just like 4+ deny, get out of here. And then you feel bad, and you cry. But I haven't really experienced that yet, so it's mostly fine. There's also some gargoyles in this list. There's so much stuff in this list, chat. Tyranids, even post nerf, Tyranids get like a ton of stuff in their lists, which is just great. It just feels good. I played some games. It was just a 3-round RTT, just kind of normal stuff. I played against Orks round 1. It was double kill rig and single regular Squigoth, not a gargantuan Squigoth, a regular Squigoth. Here he is. Look at this little boy. And he had a bunch of tank busters in him, so he was just this like sort of gun platform that wandered around. Downside is that the tank busters they miss a lot if you're not a vehicle, so that ended up happening. They would fire at like a warrior unit and kill a single warrior, which didn't feel great. So, but I ended up getting the first turn. My opponent very appropriately. So if I have a picture of deployment here, I don't. Great. My opponent had placed grots all the way around his deployment there to stop me from alpha striking his kill rigs, which was good. So between shooting and Gene Steal unit, I just clipped all the grots out. So I was able to access his more important pieces. He did make a little bit of a mistake and thought that he could use the Orc Shadow Op secondary to do actions on an objective with a character, but it does require core units. So we misplayed it a little bit there, but we realized it sort of halfway through the game. And basically, we did the classic thing where we traded for the middle. My opponent would send in a bunch of dudes, and then I attacked them with warriors, and they blew up. Eventually, the kill rigs had to come forward. They got smited by zone thropes, and then a bunch of shooting plunked into them. And my shooting actually rolled really well for some reason into the kill rigs, just winning on 5s and then sinking at AP2 with a boatload of death spitters. And both kill rigs were about half by the time they actually committed. And then once they went in, they got blown up by warriors and smites and stuff like that. So we basically were able to get to a board state where the Hive Tyrant could wander around and murder everybody, which was pretty good. So it was I would say decently close game. I think it ended up something around 70 to 90. And both of our armies were pretty depleted at that point. I had lost all of the frontline stuff, and I was just down to the support units. But fortunately, Tyranid support units are basically like regular combat units anyway. So we're able to take that one down. Yay! Round 2, I was up against Necrons, and going into this event, I was like, oh, Necrons, that's cool. There's like a bunch of Silent Kings here. This is going to be fun. And I realized that 30% of the event was Necrons going into this game, which was, I guess it shouldn't have been surprising to me, but it was. But Necrons are certainly a faction I think we're going to be talking about a little bit today, because it definitely feels like I think, as was predicted by a lot of people, the changes were wildly beneficial to them. So I played against the first of the Necron list, this one bringing Void Dragon and Nightbringer alongside the normal Necron core, which is now constructed out of the Silent King, obviously, with Scorpic Destroyers, Tomb Blades, a couple Locust Heavy Destroyers, and then some characters. He did have Saraz, so he had the opportunity to either buff Silent King with Saraz's manipulation or regenerate Miniers when they died. Because currently, depending on the event you're playing in, the Miniers, because they're core keyworded, are affected by the Rites of Reanimation that Technomancers do. The downside is that outside of Saraz, it has to be Dynasty keyworded. So you are not in the OBSEC Dynasty as the Silent King, so you need Saraz specifically to do it. So the combo is pretty expensive, and you also need the Silent King to be able to commit into your opponent's army without chance of him dying, which is certainly a significant chance in a lot of matchups. So in this case, my opponent played relatively cagey. We basically, I had set up with Psychic Interrogation, Assassination, and Banners, and I haven't yet, I think, picked out the correct boat of secondary objectives to take against Necrons. But that, I think, is going to be a big part of that matchup, and that matchup's going to be a really common one going into the future. So it's one that I think I have to spend more time kind of sussing out. I took the Banners because I wanted to force my opponent to come fight me, because generally speaking, every time I played this matchup, the Necron player has this huge bonus. They have this huge benefit of scoring. Their secondaries are so strong, and their whole army being OBSEC means that they score points so fast. It's very difficult to stop. The difference is that they're terrible at killing Tyranid models, and Tyranids are awesome at killing Necron models. So the Necron player gets points faster, but loses their army much more quickly than the Tyranid player does. And the goal of the matchup is to sort of leverage you have to kind of like balance those two benefits and drawbacks of the matchup into eventually a victory. So it's not it's not an easy matchup, and it feels to me like a coin flip, which, and actually I think it's really fun because I think it's very tactically interesting. The Necron player has to kind of feed their units at the correct rate, and the Tyranid player has to be able to like set up for aggressive plays where you can't get too aggressive because Silent King will just end your day, but you do have to be able to set up to like take the Necron home objectives at some point in the game, otherwise they'll kill you. So we sort of traded units over the middle objective. The interesting thing about Nephilim now is that without Stranglehold being a pick, there's no incentive to hold the middle if you don't think that you're gonna survive on it. So I could, throw warriors up there. The Silent King peeks around. I get shot by 2 Catan shards, and the Silent King like lays into me, and the warriors all probably die. So there's no reason for me to actually take the center objective. So my opponent toes it with models. I'll just run dudes in, or fly the Hive Tyrant in, kill everything on the objective, and run away. And there's no reason for me to keep units there, which means the Necron player basically just feeds to score Treasures of Ancient Eons, which is, again, a big reason as to why their army dies more quickly than the Tyranid players. And to be fair, Hive Tyrants are kind of a big part of that, because the Hive Tyrant plus Overrun just clips the middle of the middle of the table clear and runs away basically in every matchup anyway. So I kind of defensively play position very defensively to keep my banners active. So I'd placed banners on both the objectives. My gargoyles got shot a little bit by random guns, I think mostly by the Tomb Blades, and ended up with just 2 guys left, and basically just towed on the edge of the objective all game to give it objective secured, so my opponent couldn't break the banner really easily. And my warriors on the top did the same thing. I had this one Zone Thrope unit and several warriors, and the Raveners obviously all up over here. My opponent also played very conservatively, which I think was a bit of a downside for him, because what ended up happening is that he basically cut me on assassination. Although he did put he forced the Nightbringer down my throat at one point, and he teleported his Veil of Darkness Cryptek at me. So I was able to get 2 characters for assassination, but on the flip side, because he was so worried about the Silent King just getting biffed by a Hive Tyrant, basically, he kept the Silent King really safe all game and was never able to score big on Code of Combat. So while my assassination score wasn't great, my opponent's Code of Combat score also wasn't great, and our other secondaries kind of equaled out. And then by the end of the game, I had some plays where I was able to get in with a warrior unit with a big advance, clip out a Scarab Swarm that was hiding behind the wall, as well as an Ophidian Destroyer unit, hold that objective to knock my opponent's primary objective score down. So, and then he had to follow up and peel these guys out. And all these models ended up dying, but it took a lot of focus away from my opponent. So we eventually got into a situation where I was able to kind of force my way through the middle of the table. I think in hindsight, I played very defensively with the units on this objective to try to prevent any awkward teleporting of Scorpic Destroyers into my backline, but it might have been too defensive, and I think I ended up probably giving up a little bit of ground that I didn't necessarily need to. Like, I could have probably positioned the Raveners somewhere around this terrain, where I was opening up my backline to a teleport. But if my opponent wanted to teleport into the forest and try to charge out of it, that would have been really bad for him. As long as I could screen out up into the forest, I think that would have been okay. And then I could have more units that threatened my opponent's home objective. Because if the Raveners could get in there and clip out stuff like, characters, especially his Mancers, his Crypteks, and potentially clip out like Scorpic Destroyers or something, that would have been a really big deal. Because the Silent King himself is not objective secured. So as long as you don't get killed by him, if you kill all the other OBSEC on the objective, the Raveners would take it. So they also could make a push to hold the middle objective. And one thing I realized as well is that the terrain was pretty suited to holding the objective at like this position, where I was trying to keep things really safe so the Silent King couldn't pop out and just shoot a unit to death and get Code of Combat, but the line of sight was really awkward if I was going to be doing that. So I think I could have played more aggressively. It didn't end up making a big difference because I did end up winning by about 10 points, I believe. It was I think it was somewhere around an 80 to 90 differential in that one. It really did come down to it. I scored out the entirety of my Psychic Interrogation, and my little Psychic Interrogation bot, you can kind of see him, he's in the shadow over here, was really awesome. Even in this matchup, he has to roll a 9 or an 8, excuse me, to interrogate a Necron character and generate a CP off of it. And on 3d6 drop the lowest, that's like better than a coin flip. It's like a 60-ish%, I think. So more often than not, he generates a CP and he unfailably completes his psychic interrogation. So he's just like, in this matchup, assuming that your opponent can't just forward with the Silent King, he's super good. And even if they play super aggressive with the Silent King, you'd probably set up a wombo combo where you can kill him. And if you kill the Silent King before he maxes his Code of Combat, it's a really big deal for the Necron player. So that was good. My banners did okay. I scored these 2 banners the entire game, and I was able to even get, with a cheeky Venom Thrope, I believe my opponent had one of these Scorpec Destroyers contesting the objective. The Venom Thropes went in, declared the banner's action. The Scorpec Destroyers got killed by Psychic Powers, and the Venom Thropes completed the action. The Hive Tyrant went in, clipped out another Scorpec Destroyer unit that was hiding in the building over here, using the 2-inch engagement rule to fight through the wall. Amazing. And that made it so my opponent couldn't go back and kill that banner on round 5. So I actually ended up scoring a 12 on banners, which was pretty nice. My opponent had tried to make a play to get a couple of... this was tear down their icons, so we could drop bombs in our opponent's territory to try to score points. And he ended up using his Veil to get a bomb into the back corner of my deployment that my Raveners could get to, so they were able to stop. Or they were able to, I think, attempt to stop. I don't remember. And then the other bomb was dropped in the early game because his entire Armies objective secured. So they all complete bombs in one turn, but my warriors were able to stop that one, and that was basically the clincher. So yeah, it ended up being a super interesting game and a super good one, and set me up to, in the final game, play also against Necrons again. So get ready for this matchup. This list was a little bit more shooting oriented. My opponent had a Catacomb Command Barge, as well as he had one Catan Shard. It's not actually the Deceiver, it was just a conversion of a Catan Shard. A couple more Scarabs and a couple more Locust Heavy Destroyers instead of the double Catan. And this game ended up getting played on Conversion or Death and Zeal, I believe. So we had sticky objectives and we had corner deployment like this. And in my head, I was like, all right, well, this looks like basically the same matchup as the previous version. So I'm going to play the same secondaries and hope for the best, basically. And one thing I should mention is that both these players very, very appropriately constructed their lists so that they didn't give up good no prisoners, which is usually a weakness that Necrons have. And I didn't have the opportunity to just like auto like 14 a secondary against them. They gave up, I think, 9 and 10 respectively, which I wasn't really comfortable with picking. I think that's one of the reasons that you start to see like the CCBs and the additional Catan Shards like start to phase into lists because they're cheaper, they're more effective now, and they don't give up secondaries as well as the other options do. The map setup looks similar to the T5ST round 1 map. Yeah, so that is because this is just US Open layout. So T5S2 uses US Open, and this event did too. So that's why. Which secondaries do I use most often? Having trouble settling on some with Tyranids. I think Psychic Interrogation, in my opinion, either Psychic Interrogation or Warp Ritual, probably depending on the matchup, you should be building for. I think it was like kind of up in the air with the previous version. Like they were good options, but I don't think you had to like necessarily take specific pieces to complete them. And I think you do now. I think they have to be a core part of your game plan, unless your opponent has 4+ denies, or even if your opponent has 4+ denies. Like a Psychic Interrogation into a 4+ deny is probably worth like a 9, and costs them 2 CP, and probably gets you some CP. So like, I don't know, it's probably okay. So, never worry too much about Psychic, about Thropes getting tagged and losing Psychic. Well, you can just cast Psychic powers when you're a melee chap. So if they tag the Zone Thrope, you just kill them. Alternatively, the other Zone Thropes kill them, and then the first Zone Thropes might. The only downside is if you get tagged by a unit that is immune to psychic powers, which I did on stream the other day, which is really awkward. Then you just you gotta sort of deal with it. But That's pretty often. That's basically only sisters. If your opponent has like an Eversword or a Calexis Assassin, you can, like, it could happen, but the Calexis Assassin's getting killed by something before that happens. For sure. So anyway, I ended up taking the same secondaries this time around because I was like, well, the setup looks similar. It's the same matchup. We'll just go with, we'll re-rack it. We'll run it back and hope for the best. And that was a whoopsie. The thing that I didn't really consider is that in the previous version, the deployment zones went like this, whereas in Death and Zeal, the deployment zone goes like this. So what we lose is this area up in here, where you can position units to defend your upper home objective, and add additional objectives secured there. And that's not really here on this map. And not to mention the fact that if you deploy too heavily in this area to push towards that objective, if the Necron player goes first and he deploys aggressively with TSK, he could put the Silent King here, Silent King just wanders over here and vaporizes the unit and immediately starts scoring Code of Combat, which feels bad. And I think you need all the warriors to win, so we didn't do that. So I deployed the Gargoyles over in this corner, and I deployed the Gene Stealers over, I think actually just in the terrain. My opponent ended up winning the roll to go first, which is pretty unfortunate. I think that this game could have been way different if I had gone first. But my opponent won the roll to go first. Pre-game moved a unit of Tomb Blades over here, buffed them up, and then they pushed super hard, and they killed all the Gene Stealers inside the building. And they were able to do it because I didn't put the Gene Stealers, or because I put the Gene Stealers in the building. They were able to do it from the opposite side of the building, meaning I didn't have a good opportunity to go attack them. So I think they ended up just surviving. I had pushed the Gargoyles up. I kept them within 6 inches of Synapse, and I called Invulnerable Save on turn 1. So that the next turn that they fired, they were shooting into the Invulnerable Save, and they didn't end up killing the Gargoyles. So the Gargoyles ended up holding the objective for a turn and dropping the banner down. But it was very annoying. And that Tomb Blade unit actually kind of messed me up in a big way. So my opponent played relatively conservatively. He had, you can kind of see them at the bottom of the screen here. We have some Raveners going on a secret mission into my opponent's territory down here. My opponent he actually had his other Tomb Blade unit positioned on this objective, and the Raveners, we made this little space between the warriors that you can't really see, but there's a space between the warriors so that the Raveners who were positioned up here could single file their way through on their 20-inch move, charge into the terrain with that beautiful 2-inch engagement range, wipe out all these dudes, and then peel back to prevent my opponent from getting easy Code of Combat points. So I wasn't so sure about that move because it felt aggressive, and what it stopped me from doing is just yeeting the Tyrant over here and killing these guys and then running back, because that's where my over ended up getting spent. There's maybe an argument to be made for just leaving the Raveners to their fate and like trying to hide them in this corner, and then using the Hive Tyrant more aggressively, but I think that if I do that, my opponent just gets charges into them, and that makes it easier for him to hold the objective. What ended up happening was that my opponent pushed the Locust Destroyers up, as well as the CCB, I think, and got some shots into the Raveners and killed most of them, but not all of them, because they were catalysted. But more importantly, didn't get anything to this objective. So I actually cut him like 8 primary objective points for doing that, which felt pretty good. My banner started ticking up. My opponent was pushing a Catan Shard forward that actually rolled, and this is the downside of bringing the 6-man warrior units, is that the Catan Shard rolled like an absolute star god in with his Sky of Falling Stars, and killed probably like 5 or 6 warriors by the end of the game. he would roll a successful conversion on a warrior unit and roll 3 mortal wounds like unerringly often. I was like, please stop, this is the worst. So I had a lot of depleted warrior units. It didn't end up making that big of a difference, but it put a lot of like additional pressure on me, which I didn't like. On the flip side though, it gave me an easy interrogation. So I had my Neurothrope hiding inside the building and just interrogating that guy all game. But this ended up being pretty back and forth. The fight over this objective ended up being a pretty big deal. My opponent pushed the Scarabs forward to hold the middle and keep my warriors back for a turn. The Scarabs ended up getting murdered, and that was about all they contributed. But yeah, here's the Ravener unit. Secret Mission Raveners hiding from the terrifying Silent King and all of his friends. And then yeah, here are the Tomb Blades trying to shoot all of my little happy gargoyles who are just all they want to do is drop banners, man. That's all it. That's all they want. I had so from there, my opponent had I think successfully, or he had pushed the Catacomb Command Barge up forward in here, and I had to take an assassination for the second time again, as I said. So I big advanced my warrior squad over here, and they fired into... They clipped a plasma site that was hiding on the objective, which is a little bit hard to get to because you can't target it if it's near the destroyers. And he had the Ophidians over here. So they moved into this area. They were able to clip that guy, put a little bit of damage into the CCB, and then charge the CCB and kill it in melee, and then overran back to make the charge from Silent King harder. So we ended up getting an assassination point on the board, which is pretty good. The other option was that these guys push up into the Ophidian destroyers and relieve pressure from my objective, but I wasn't sure if I was going to get the opportunity to get an assassinate point if I didn't at this point right now. The Tyranid Prime actually went over to try to deal with these guys, but again, I didn't end up committing my Hive Tyrant because I felt like I needed the overrun on this side, and I didn't think I could afford to use it with the Hive Tyrant. And if the Hive Tyrant ever ends the turn outside range of the Tyrant Guard, he gets plowed by Maniers from Silent King. Silent King's Maniers were just waiting for him to do something stupid like that. Maybe there was a position over here where I could have been out of true line of sight behind this big wall, but I'm not sure that there was. So I don't know. So the Tyranid Prime ended up not killing the Tomb Blades. I had nothing really in range to deal with the Ophidians because I had to drop my Onslaught over here. So these guys couldn't get Onslaught to confirm the charge on the Ophidians, which would have made me feel much better about myself. So the Ophidians ended up... There's these guys hiding from the Silent King. Silent King actually failed a charge with a reroll going into them. It was probably like a 7 or an 8, but still very unfortunate for my opponent. So the Ophidians ended up coming in. I think they charged into the gargoyles and clipped them out and took the objective away. So they broke my banner and they took my primary objective. And I didn't appreciate that. You know, I thought that was kind of rude. On the flip side, this is a couple turns later, but I ended up killing them in the psychic phase. I got these warriors up into the middle, super buffed them. They put a bunch of shooting into the Catan Shard, and I believe that we squeaked a Zoanthrope around to smite the Catan Shard. Or maybe it was this one squeaked around to smite the Catan Shard. But we smote it for a bunch of mortal wounds. We shot it with the warriors for a bunch of mortal wounds. And because these guys survived, they also got to contribute, which was pretty nice. And I even squeaked the Ravener around. I think he might have pushed over to shoot. So we phase capped the Catan Shard and Psychic. We phase capped him in shooting. I charged him with 3 warriors, and then I think I buffed him with +1 attack just to make sure with the rerolls 1s to hit and wounds. They ended up converting a bunch of damage into the Catan Shard, and it just did not roll any invulnerable saves and again vaporized. So we were at 2 on assassination. I was feeling pretty good about myself. But I was pretty far forward, and this was the turn this was Silent King's turn to shine. So I had warriors in the center. I had the Ravener up here. I had my Neurothrope, who's I think he might have been the one that actually smote the Catan Shard, now that I'm thinking about it. These warriors I believe they just got murdered by Scorpic Destroyers is what happened to them. But that meant the Silent King could pop up. He killed the Ravener. He killed the Sky Slashers, who had been... they'd been tucked in on my opponent's stable quarter to deny big Purge the Vermin, which was good because I was cutting my opponent pretty heavily on that secondary. And he tried for a kill onto the Neurothrope. He failed to kill the Neurothrope, but he killed the Ravener in melee, and he shot the Warriors to death, and he shot the Sky Slashers to death. So he immediately scored a 10 on Code of Combat, which is pretty sad. I was very happy having my opponent at 0 for that secondary for the entire game, and then he wasn't suddenly. So that's generally how Silent King activations go, I think. And that basically forced the game into a question mark of whether or not I could kill the Silent King. And it turns out that I could. So Silent King sat in the middle of the objective over here saying, "What are you going to do about me?" And I said, what I'll do is I'll put these Venom Thropes over here, and I'll charge you with them, and then I'll charge you with this Hive Tyrant, and then I'll smite you with 2 units of Zone Thropes and a Neurothrope. And a second Neurothrope. I think I actually had smitten with a second Neurothrop because he only catalysted. We didn't need an overrun or an onslaught that turn. So the Silent King took... basically, we clipped the Menhirs out between Psychic and the Venom Thropes attacks. The Venom Thropes got reroll once they hit and wound from all the friends. And then the Hive Tyrant attacked the Silent King. Rolled. I only think it rolled 1 or 2 attacks for his swords for Adrenal Surge, but with full rerolls was able to put basically full convert them. And my opponent didn't roll Stellar on invulnerable saves, so the Silent King got cut into tiny pieces by a billion Bone Sword attacks. So that was good. He did explode, do much damage to me, but he'd actually charged the Neurothrop that was standing over here at that point, and had put it down to 2 wounds. But then because of all of the mortal wounds that we dealt back, he actually healed and ended up surviving, I think, just barely. So my opponent kind of went for broke, pushed the Scorpic Destroyers into the middle. I missed the fight last, I think, with the Venom Thrope, which was potentially game-ending. This was top of round 5. So I'd killed Silent King bottom of round 4, so I was at 10 on Assassination, which made me feel pretty good. The Venom Thrope missed the fight last in the Scorpic Destroyers, but they were going in to try to kill the Hive Tyrant to make sure the Hive Tyrant didn't have any potential avenues to get in over here. It was very sad that I missed that because they got to attack the Hive Tyrant. They put the Hive Tyrant down to bottom bracket. But didn't kill it, and I believe that they survived just barely so that they held this objective. So if the Venom Thrope ability had triggered and they fight lasted, the Tyrant would have just killed them before they got to swing, which didn't happen. So sad for me, but I was left with no holding, or with having to kill the Scorpex to hold the middle objective, and with a low bracket Hive Tyrant. But I believe at that point I had called the Hive Tyrant imperative so I could fall back in charge, and he ended up just falling back and then... I think just blowing up another character. Did he? Or maybe he failed his charge on the other character. I don't remember. At the end of the day, though, the downside was that losing control of this objective in the top corner over here, and more importantly, not getting a banner on it for so long because my opponent just kept coming in and controlling it with objective security units between the Tomb Blades and the Scarabs and the Ophidian Destroyers, and then mostly like those Tomb Blades surviving another turn. I kept losing control of that objective, and that ended up costing me a ton of points. And we ended up with, I believe, a 7-point differential on the final turn, which was very sad. So I ended up going down to the second round of Necrons that I hit in the final game. But the game was sick, to be honest. I think we both made some really, like, the plays were really cool. There's a lot of thinking going on, and I probably would have been better off with an objective other than banners. I don't know if there was one that could have gotten me significantly more points, but I feel that I maybe should have forced the push of the Silent King a turn earlier, because then I have the more of an opportunity to deny my opponent scoring in the final turn. So I think ultimately what I ended up doing was I ended up not pushing more aggressively enough is I think what happened. And I think that if I had forced the Silent King to come forward and actually fight me a turn earlier, in the center of the table, then I think I'm in a much better spot. But as it said, my opponent could sort of play kind of defensively. He could contest this objective. I was contesting his objective over on the other side. But because he has the secondary objective control, as long as he's denying my banner, he's like sort of getting points up on me. And that was basically what did it, was the difference between banners and something else. So there's maybe an argument for like a retrieve Nephilim data or something like that. I can score like this quarter's easy. This quarter I could score on turn 1 with the gargoyles, and then we bounce the gargoyles and go like into the other quarter or something. I think it's only an 8, whereas I think I scored 6 on banners, or 7 maybe. So I don't know if that would have been a huge difference. I think I needed to like have another objective that I could max, but I don't know what that would be. So the takeaway, I think, was that I think I have to probably try to push more aggressively into Necron armies. And I played really cagey this game, and my opponent was able to present so many threats that I didn't like feel comfortable answering them all, and so I left some go, and that was kind of what killed me. So didn't feel bad about losing because I think that Necrons are one of, if not the strongest matchup right now, or army in the game right now. And I think I had a lot of really good takeaways from this finals game. So I felt pretty good about it. Plus, I got to kill the Silent King in one tap, which is like pretty sweet. Augustin, keep playing aggro into Necrons? I think so. Yeah. So I think, and I know, like, as a, I'm playing as a Tyranid player. So speaking as a Tyranid player, I can't really speak for other factions and their play styles, but I know that Tyranids, like I said in the previous game, do way more damage than Necrons, like dramatically more damage than Necrons. Once you touch a Necron unit with a Tyranid unit, that Necron unit, like generally speaking, just turns into vapor. The downside is that they score points like 10 times as fast as you, because Tyranids don't really have any reasonable faction secondaries, especially if you're up against Necrons who don't have any unit champions, so you can't use cranial feasting against them. And so that's kind of the tension. And I think as the Tyranid player, you just have to push, and by like the end of round 3, create a game state where the Hive Tyrant like dominates the table. Because that's the game state where you want to be standing. Because the Hive Tyrant, generally speaking, kills every single unit in the Necron Codex in one tap. So you have to like, you have to just force them to fight you and have a big fight and kill all of their stuff, and then eventually prevent them from like maxing their secondaries in rounds 4 and 5. And I think that maybe becomes mission dependent, but I think I have to play this matchup like 3 or 4 more times before I feel comfortable in it. I also think it's important to keep in mind like what your score is. I wasn't really keeping track of the score and what the differential was. I bet I would have pushed a little bit more aggressively if I'd known I was down like 5 going into the end of the game. Good stuff. DJ Nightmare, hoping that because your arm is boo-boo. Oh, army. DJ Nightmare, what army are you playing? That's so sad. So that was my lesson for today, I think. That was my tournament. I came in 4th place. In fact, I took a funny screenshot. I bet I could find it. Because I was looking through BCP events in preparation for today, and I looked at the event. This was the top 5, or I was 5th place, excuse me. I was 5th place behind 4 Necron players. So this is my final round opponent. Playing Necrons to 3-0, and then Necrons, because they score highly, we're able to get out all of my with big scores in all of their other games. This was my round 2 opponent, in fact, who beat me by a single point at the end there. And then there's little old me. So get ready for that, because I have a sneaking suspicion that's going to be the metagame for a little while. Not that I feel that Necrons are like, I mean, I guess they're they're overpowered, but they're like in a weird way. They break like Nephilim. They don't break 40k, if that makes sense, I guess. Pod 1 list review? I don't know if do we need a pod list review? I don't think so. What we can do though is look at tournament lists though. So we'll go over to our friends over at Discount Games Inc. and look at some tournaments. And we can do that for the remainder of the show. There's been some really interesting developments, I believe, on this doesn't look great. There it is. That looks better. Bet we can move this around too so it looks nicer. Not really, just kidding. There's been some weird developments that I didn't really expect to come out of the metagame of the last couple of weeks. Oops. They break the scoreboard, not your army. So I think the number one is there is a bit of a prevalence of Death Guard. There needs to be incentive to play Warriors again. That I do agree with, for sure. Yeah, it's kind of annoying that like most of the time Necrons just like they don't play actual Necrons. They just like they play Obsec Dynasty, and then they play like anything with a high speed value. And the old school Warrior bricks have like sort of gone by the wayside. Ritalin for robot boys? What does that mean? Ritalin's like a pill, right? Irregular heartbeat, delirium, panic, psychosis, and heart failure. Okay. So I have panic and delirium for AdMech. It's like I don't know. I have an interesting relationship with Adeptus Mechanicus. This might be terrible to say. I don't know if I don't think I dislike Adeptus Mechanicus, but I do think I dislike the style of army that Adeptus Mechanicus is, because it's a very static gunline army, and oftentimes it just wins and loses based on like how many line of sight blocking pieces of terrain are on the table. And I think the correct way to play Adeptus Mechanicus is not like that, but that's just how people play it, which brings me to believe that I don't dislike AdMech, but I think I may just dislike the AdMech community, and that may be terrible. I might have just alienated a ton of viewers there. But I feel like, and this is the case for a lot of our other armies like Tau, for example, there's like a subset of people who play armies that have the style of mechanics that AdMech do. Weird. So what I was saying was that there's like a subset of people that play an army that works mechanically like Adeptus Mechanicus, because it's a zero-sum game, not because they want to like interact amicably with 40k, if that makes sense. So like there are plenty of people that are like, well, I'm gonna play AdMech because I can shoot my opponents to death in 2 turns and then the game's over. But like, that's stupid. That's stupid, and also not the most optimal way to play them. And then they get mad when like that doesn't happen. And that's just something that happens, you know. I think with generally with like gunline style armies like that, I think that's just something that happens where the people want to play the gunline style army so they can roll dice and remove opponents' models. And then when that doesn't happen, they get upset. And I don't think that's the faction's fault. I think it's the player base's fault, and maybe the terrain. If you're on really light terrain, like a bunch of Iron Strider Ballastar, you're going to kill you, but the goal is not to play on really light terrain because it's bad. It makes the game unfun, so I don't know. Instantly canceled by AdMech Discords? Yeah, maybe. Whatever. Come at me, AdMech players. People already think that I hate AdMech, so... just play friggin' Infiltrators, AdMech community. Play Rust, play Sicarians, play the correct AdMech list, which is like decent shooting but backed up by like hardcore melee, and then call me when it's over. The other thing is that AdMech had a full like year and a half of fucking AdMech 6-plane, and people would be like, this list is fine. This list is totally okay, because like sometimes your planes, I don't know, get shot and die or something. And it was the most degenerate list I think like ever played ever. It was so stupid. That was a lot of like the like T5SD like season 3 Invitational was a lot of AdMech 6-plane. I think all of season 3 was like sort of dominated by it. Season 3 and moving into season 4, and then it got nerfed by the data slate. But that was like. And people would defend it and be like, this list is okay, and you would be like, come on, clearly it's not. That's so stupid. So I feel the same way about Tau players, not so much. I feel the same way about Tau players who ask for 9 broadside to come back, because that is this very exact same style of army, where it's like this army where there's no counterplay. You just roll dice at your opponent and hope their stuff dies. And if the terrain's bad and you can't draw line of sight to their entire army, you just whine. Because there's no like tactics involved. But I think that Tau generally, and especially now, Tau actually like requires a ton of movement knowledge, which is really cool and interesting. So I think Tau is actually really sweet, which is why you probably can't see it quite behind me, which is why there's a Tau army on the shelf over there. So there you go. But that's like I say, you should play, if you're playing AdMech, you should play melee stuff and then back it up with the shooting, not just play shooting, and then you'll be fine. You'll feel better about yourself. Let's talk about some cool lists. So there's been kind of a resurgence post their points changes of Death Guard, kind of out of the blue. So Orange County Classic and Gong Hammer I believe there's some other, yeah, there's double 4-in-1 X1 Necrons from, or not Necrons, Death Guard from Arch City. These guys sort of came right out of the woodwork. Gonghanger and Arch City were both very large, I believe. And it's good to see them coming back. So we have, looks like didn't write down their plate company, so that's useful. Thank you. This is Richard Hill playing Death Guard. This is from Gonghanger. 5-0 at the top spot. And also, you can't see this list at all. Let's give it a little zoom out here. Here we go. Nailed it. So our city was 49 players. Okay, so not that big. It was reasonable. Michael Pitts think the OBSEC trait from Necrons needs to be changed. I actually am not sure. It's like Necrons are in such a weird spot that if you change OBSEC, you like kind of neuter the entirety of the faction, which sucks. Without addressing like the problems. Like I think like the only reason Necrons are good is OBSEC Dynasty. Like I think you can play Necrons otherwise, but it's like so much worse. I don't know. I think that honestly, I think that they should nerf Code of Combat. I'm gonna be honest, chat. I think Code of Combat is like the kicker because all of their other secondaries they have to do stuff for, and maybe like Ancient Machineries could get a cut or something. But like Purge the Vermin has a ton of counterplay. If you have like any small units that you could just hide in the corner of a table quarter, the Necron player immediately loses like 8 points. So I think Purge the Vermin is like probably fine. I think that the one where they have to grab objectives is maybe too easy to grab objectives, but they still have to trade units to do it because you have to hold the objective. And you usually only get 2 points a turn from it. Unless you're taking multiple objectives and then you're like donating your opponent units. So it's kind of the Harlequins deal, right? Where you just like straight up trade models for victory points. And I think that's fine. Like that's an okay paradigm to have. But the problem I have with it is Code of Combat, because you can, as a Necron player, you can set up the situation where you throw a bunch of garbage in the middle of the table to score your Treasures of Aeons Past, and then your opponent comes out to kill all that stuff, because if they don't, you get a 12 point on primary, and then Silent King comes out and kills 3 units and 10s on Code of Combat immediately. And that's like a little silly. I think Code of Combat should be it should score like at the end of the battle round or at the end of each turn, score 3 points for each character character unit that destroyed a unit, or it should be like noble models score it. I think the interaction between Code of Combat and Silent King needs to be nerfed, because Code of Combat gives them, if you're taking Silent King in your list, which you are because he's fucking incredible, the interaction between it gives you like the third secondary basically for free, and I think that's too strong. So that's my opinion on it. Is Gilliman too many points or an auto take now? I don't know. The problem with Gilliman is like, to get the full use out of him, you need to play Ultramarines, and then you feel bad because you're playing Ultramarines. Like, I don't know if Gilliman's he's probably a fine number of points, I would imagine, but he's like, his faction's not good enough, is my opinion. Plus, you can't reroll his stupid resurrection ability. Like, why isn't he 4+? It's like a 4+ to entirely change the game state. Like, just make it automatic, dude. Or like make it so you can spend a reroll to make it automatic or something like that. I don't know. Silent King shouldn't have core, maybe. I mean, Silent King not having core kind of changes how Code of Combat works with it. So like he's significantly less consistent. But right now he just kills everything he shoots at, because he's like, he full rerolls his hits. And then he has like techno-oracular targeting and plus like a CP reroll on wound rolls. So yeah, plus he's like gives you enough CP that you can do whatever you want. I don't know if I think the problem with Silent King having core keyword is in his own auras rather than other interactions. But anyway, speaking of things that don't have the core keyword, here's a bunch of There's more Tyrian and like a ton of vehicles, which is kind of cool. Triple Fetid Bloat Drones, triple Mythic Blight Haulers, plus a Plague Burst Crawler and a Demon Prince. Oh, it's inexorable, it looks like. So there's just no infantry, right? Besides a single Tallyman in this list. That's fucking cool. Is that the style of Death Guard that has been doing well in other events too, is the question. It looks like it's kind of wide open. We have these Death Shroud Terminators and Blightlord Terminators that got a points cut between 3 and 5 points. I think 3 points for Blightlords and 5 points for Death Shrouds. Plus objectives secured in the last data slate, or 2 data slates ago. The Fetid Boat Drones were always a kind of a staple in Death Guard to give them something that moves more than 5 inches. But the Plague Burst Crawlers being cheaper just like unlocks a ton of points. We have a big Plague Marine unit in this list. Double Malignant Plague Caster. I imagine that might be to open up like a Psychic Interrogation. And then you still have your Miasma online if you need it. Plus 40 Poxwalkers. So this is like what I would consider a little bit more of a standard list. The Double Malignant Plague Caster is a little bit interesting. But this one, Richard Hill's list is like off the beaten track, and I appreciate it. This list is kind of sick. Somebody call Shuma in here. I bet we would. Hey, Nergomat, thanks for flexing your mod privileges there, getting rid of our Slanesh bots. That's sick. And then Garrett Stacy, also 4-on-1 from Arch City. And this one, a little bit more standard as well. This time, 80 Poxwalkers. Are we Army of Renown? We are Terminus as Assault Force here, so we can regenerate the Poxwalkers and Deep Strike them. And then Big Plague Marine bricks with their free upgrades. Interestingly, you can't take transports in that list because you can't take vehicles. So it's just a ton of dudes wandering around up the table. So it's 40 Poxwalkers, just basically screening for Plague Marines and Death Shroud Terminators. Good stuff. Yeah, that's sick. So that was the biggest thing that surprised me. So we are, I think, still in kind of a period of instability in the Nephilim meta, where there's a lot of stuff doing pretty well that are unexpected. We have some Orks doing well. We have an Evil Sons list here, and then from Show Me Showdown last week, Dan Salmons went 5-1 with Orks. So Orks are coming back a little bit. We see a little bit of Space Marines rising to the top as well. Obviously, a lot of Blood Angels have been doing very well since the Armor of Contempt change, but now doing even better. Austin Wingfield here on Coastal Wargaming playing Black Templars to a 5-0, which is pretty cool as well. The awkward part is that there's been a lot of asterisks to Black Templars wins previously, but I hope that's not the case here. But yeah, mostly just a sort of a straightforward Space Marine list. 2 5-man Crusaders, 1 5-man Incursor, Helbrecht, double Chaplain. So one of them is Master of Sanctity, Wise Orator. No Breviary on the other one. And only 2 CP spent in pregame? Is that right? Am I missing something? Oh no, we have an Apothecary buffed up super hard. Yeah. Oh my god. There's so many Slash bots! Look at them go. Hot damn. Don't like the Inquisitor in the Black Templars list? It does turn off your Abhor the Witch, but honestly, like, who cares? I don't know. I'm not sure I'm like a firm believer in Abhor the Witch anymore, to be perfectly honest. Raven Guard top tier anti-meta when? I don't know. I don't know, chat. The Raven Guard secondary is certainly super sick. The problem is that like Raven Guard are so they're good, but they're so inconsistent. Because so much of the game changes when they go first or second, which just sucks. Like in this, and I think that's even more compounded with their new secondary as well. Because if they go first, they can just like be plowing in cursors on your opponent's like table half and dropping bombs on their objectives on turn 1. Plus, they have like a Master of Ambush redeploy, and then they punch you with a bunch of Terminators or whatever. Or I guess aggressors, right? Is what they usually redeploy. And that's just like, I don't know, kind of obnoxious. But if they go second, they can't do any of that because any of their stuff that gets pushed forward like that just dies. So if you're looking to play competitively, Raven Guard are just really in a weird spot right now. Space was 5-0 in an Iron Man GT. Yeah, so this one was, I think this is a relatively small GT. I think it was just about 20 people, which is why it only, the top 5 isn't reported here, just the number 1. But it did win all of its games. I don't think it needed to get first place because it's less than 20, less than 32. But I think Space Wolves, I mean, they're 1-0 right now in T5S2 Invitational 2. So Space Wolves have a lot going on. And I accidentally hit back on my mouse there, chat. I apologize. And this is, I think we saw basically this list or a similar version at Motor City. It is a Beast Slayer Armor of Rust Chapter Master. So that dude is he's just going ham at people. Primera's capped on a bike with I'm not sure that build is legal, chat. I'm gonna be honest. Typically you cannot take 2 Codex Warlord traits back to back, which is what we've done there. Yeah, because he's Warlord plus the Space Wolf strap, I imagine. I don't know. Weird. Yeah, -3 CP because he has Relic double Warlord trait. Yeah. But the double Warlord trait is usually is locked to a chapter-specific Warlord trait, and that's not what we've taken here. So I don't know if that list is entirely legal, chat. But otherwise, double lung Wolfguard squads. These are just jump pack Vanguard veterans, basically 3 units of Wolfen, which I think is sort of the staple for Space Wolves armies now. 2 Cyber Wolves, which you should always take for sure. If you have any fast attack slots, you should probably take Cyber Wolves in them because they're so good. An Eliminator squad with Morkai's Teeth Bolts. I really like this build for Eliminators, but it's no, there's no bolt gun on the Sergeant, which makes me sad because the bolt gun lets the unit move, double move, and that makes them super good at grabbing secondaries and screening and stuff. And then we have 2 Longfang squads. They're all grav cannons, interestingly. A lot of times you see 3 or triple grav cannon or quad grav cannon plus 1 multi-melta, because then you can double tap whichever gun you want. And having the 1 multi-melta doesn't like significantly debuff your damage output against like light infantry, but I believe it does increase your point cost by quite a bit. So, and you can't take the quad guns if you want to be in a drop pod, but we're not taking a drop pod. So these guys are just going to outflank with the Space Wolf strap. Having 2 units of them though means you can outflank turn 2 and turn 3, and you can keen senses both, which is pretty nice. Yeah, so that's a little awkward. Yeah, not sure that list is legal. Well, there it is, I guess. That's okay. I think I don't know how much like we've only taken Imperium Sword there for the Benediction of Fury plus Mantra of Strength wombo combo, but I don't think you like really need that. Most of the time he's just gonna run around and Canticle of Hate people. So I don't know. It is what it is. But then from there, yeah, Necrons highly represented, Adeptus Sororitas highly represented. I don't know how much we need to talk about those. I think I'm like fairly certain all of the Necron lists are going to be the same. You know, they have slight differences because the stuff you can take on them generally doesn't matter because it's all objective secured and pregame moves and moves very fast. But I think 90% of the time you see the double Scorpic Destroyer, some number of Canopic Scarabs just because they're cheap. The question is whether you take like Wraiths or Tomb Blades, or I guess in this case both. The Tomb Blades are super good as a trading unit because they move 20 inches, right? And can just grab objectives from your opponent to score treasures of Ancient Eons. And then usually there's a single Catan shard. Sometimes there's an argument to be made for double Catan. Less so triple nowadays, but which I think is fine. But yeah, it looks like same deal. Silent King. This one with a big unit of Locust Destroyers. And I think I'm a big proponent of the Locust Destroyers. Because, although, one thing that Necrons have done in the past is they build to take like a ton of... But they end up just having a ton of CP. Because their army doesn't tend to spend that much. And the Silent King refreshes your CP. But what a lot of people have been doing in this list, I think, does the same. Oh, it does have a patrol detachment for a Warlord Command Barge to refund for the Silent King to refund, excuse me. But what a lot of lists have been doing is just spending the Silent King's CP on just extra detachments. So they take like Outriders and Vanguards and Spearheads so they don't have to take troops options, because you don't need troops options when all of the rest of your army functions as troops being objective secured. If you don't do that, though, and you do refund your CP, a lot of times you need a sync for CP, and we have a couple of those here in this list, because we have the Locust Destroyers, which are probably one of the better targets for a Veil of Darkness, which we have in the Chronomancer. So you can My Will Be Done them, so they hit on 2s, they reroll their own 1s to hit, you Veil of Darkness them away, and then you spend 2 CP, so reroll wounds. And it's like a ton of damage. It's kind of awkwardly strength 6 D3 damage, so it's not super consistent. But it's like a threat your opponent has to deal with the entirety of the game, because if they let you just deploy that unit wherever, because they have guns, they make much better use of the deep strike than most other armies, most other units. Whereas if you're deep striking just melee, a screen just stops you. But if you're deep striking a gun, you have to screen out the range of the gun. So you have to screen out another like 12 inches. Which gets so much, super tough. And it's one of the reasons why like the big Necron Warrior bricks were always good. I mean, they were fine. I don't know if they were good, but they had a lot of threat with the big Gauss Flayers with all the Wombo combos, and the Locust Destroyers are the same way. This one has 10 Lich Guard and 5 Triarch Praetorians as well, instead of Tomb Blades. So no Tomb Blades on this list. It's a little bit slower. And then I imagine Show Me Showdown. Nathaniel Bjorg. Probably looks very similar. Catacomb Command Barge, plus a Chronomancer. 1 Transcendent Catan. I like that this one has a big unit of Tomb Blades with Gauss Blasters, so these guys actually can do some serious damage. And Patrol Detachment, Scarab Swarms, Locust Destroyers. Yeah, so it's actually mostly the same. The big unit of Tomb Blades is it's interesting to see that it is running blasters, so it's a little higher AP, which is good into Armor of Contempt. But if you're playing like Tesla or Particle Casters, you don't really care so much about Armor of Contempt because your AP sucks anyway, so you can't reduce AP 0 down below 0, so it doesn't do anything to you. And then especially with Tesla, you can like full reroll off of the Silent King. So if you're My Will Be Dumbed, you hit on 2s and you full reroll Fishing for 6s, and you convert more shots than you attacked with, which is pretty good. Eradicators over Dreadnoughts for the new threats of Necrons and Sisters. I think that's kind of a wide open question. That depends on a lot of things. I would say Eradicators are generally okay, but usually you take like 1, 3, or 4 man. And then whether it's replacing Dreadnoughts, I think, depends on what else is in your list and what chapter you're playing and what kind of Dreadnought. I would take Eradicators over like box Dreadnoughts most of the time. There also needs to be a limit of only 1 Catan per list. I don't know about that, chat. I don't think Catan are good enough to warrant like being restricted. I mean, even a Catan with like, the perfect swath of powers basically is just a regular Psyker. Like, he's a little bit better than a regular Psyker, except he doesn't unlock Psychic secondaries, so he's probably worse. And then they're also restricted per detachment, so the second Catan also costs you CP and gives up Assassination. So there's like a ton of downsides to Catan. I don't think Catan are actually that strong right now. Not to mention the fact that people are bringing, like, just sort of tangentially bringing out-of-phase mortal wounds to deal with other stuff that aren't Catan, and Catan just get hit by that. Like we just watched in the T5S2 yesterday, we watched Ash C's game versus Thousand Suns, and she brought a ton of anti-chaos mortal wounds in her list, like out-of-phase mortal wounds, between a Dugmata and Ephriel's Thorn and Kaiganel, and that was mostly just to kill Abaddon if she hit a Heretic Astartes army with Abaddon in it. And if you can kill Abaddon, you damn well can kill a Catan, because a Catan is significantly easier to kill than Abaddon is. So people are just like randomly packing technology to kill a Catan. The downside, like the upside for Catan is that, like, you know, generally they're efficient enough to still contribute to the game before they die, but they will die. They're not like these invincible god machines. Opinion on the 5/0 Tyranids with a Tervagon. Which Tyranids is that? Let's look at it. Is it this one? Nope. Is it... Close all these lists I have open. This one? Yes. So Eric Horger from Warzone Man. This was almost 3 weeks ago. So this one, I don't know what the format this would have been playing. This might not have been playing Nephilim, chat, which was significantly different. They paid $140 for Screamer Killers. Is that correct? That sounds right. So this is probably post-data sheet, right? All right, $420, excuse me. So that's $140 a piece. I think that's correct. Post-data slate. So it's Behemoth, so we're taking Territorial Instincts, so for a little obsec. And it means that the Tervagon is... you don't have to pay for Alien Cunning on the Tervagon, which is kind of a downside of that model. So which means it unlocks Adaptive Biology for you. And I guess we could just like... Oh, it is Warped with Nephilim, actually, chat. It says at the top of the list. I'm smart. Don't judge me. It has the Winged Hive Tyrant, Reaper of Obliterax. No Maw Claws. Get the fuck out of here. Reaper of Obliterax. Garbage. We have 10 Gargoyles, 10 Hormigons. Just add bodies to objectives. Warriors to push the Synaptic Link. Zoanthropes. No Venoms. Which is fine. Yeah, we're a battalion here because it unlocks a slot for the Tyrannifex. Acid Spray plus Voracious is pretty interesting. I would love to see Venom Tropes in this list, though. I don't know what you cut. Because the troops are really... You'd have to cut a Carnifex, and that's probably unacceptable. And then otherwise, it's just triple heavy Venom Cannon plus the Tyrannifex as shooting. I think I'm like coming around on Turbogons, by the way, chat. I think that they're probably, especially with like how important centrally located Psychic is for Psychic powers and denies, I think Turbogon's pretty exciting. I might play some lists of Turbogons later this week, actually. The Acid Spray Tyrannifex with Voracious is really pretty interesting. You can trigger the Voracious off like the Stinger salvo, so you don't necessarily need like a super long range gun to get it. And I think the Acid Spray is still the best option, especially at clearing little units that the Carnifexes don't really want to have to deal with. So I don't dislike that at all. Plus, it's a 5 model attack on the objective, and your opponent doesn't necessarily want to attack it, because it's not doing as much damage as the Carnifex, but it's significantly harder to kill. So between that and the Turvagon, who's like wildly difficult to kill, because the Turvagon's got 17 wounds with a 5+ damage ignore, so it's just super tough. I guess the other awkward part is that there's no Neurothrope either. So you... Yeah, we have to Onslaught on the Turvagon itself. So you're kind of just wandering around with the Screamer Killers. There's a pretty significant chance that you don't get Onslaught that well. Are Hormigons back? Sorry, something in front of my face. I think they're just They're just easier to hide than gargoyles. I wouldn't say that they're like back in a big way. And Tyranids, like, I don't know, one 8-point obsec body is kind of the same as the next. Hormagaunts can advance in charge, so they're like push to contest objectives a little bit farther. So if you're in a situation where your opponent doesn't have like a super tough unit, they're just like sitting on objective, like there's 5 Battle Sisters or something, Hormagaunts you can just pop advance in charge and they just like yeet over and then take the objective away, which is pretty good. And then they all die, which is fine. Gargoyles can't really do that. But gargoyles are faster to begin with, so they're better in action. So like taking one of each is like totally fine. Let's talk about orcs. Somebody asked to talk about orcs. I don't know if somebody has to talk about orcs. But we can talk about orcs because we had a couple orc lists do pretty well in the last week. So over here, Coastal Wargaming Warp Charged. Kevin Leonard went X&1 with an Evil Sons list. This one is... Are Hormagaunts going to be the new Rax? No. Not even close. I think Rax are the new Rax. And the old Rax. In fact. So this is... It's a Speed Freaks mob list. So we got Hopping Def Copters and everything, chat. Triple Boom Deck of Snaz Wagons. 1 Def Copter unit? I guess that's fine. You have less CP to spend in Nephilim, so you're a little bit worried about paying a ton of CP to bounce those guys. And Drive-By Crumpin's like probably just as good as Attack Out of the Sun, so having one unit to do that with is okay. And then just literally one of every buggy type. Triple Rocket Truck Squig Buggies. Still seeing the Rocket Truck Squig Buggies after the indirect fire nerf. But 90% of the time you can just shoot something in line of sight anyway, which is probably fine. Triple Shock Jump Dragstas, which are awesome. Triple Mega Track Scrap Jet. And double Wasbomb Blast Jet. Yeah, this is like this is pretty normal Speed Freaks list. The one thing that you don't see is the boss. Usually there's a bike boss with a Killer Claw, but you don't. That guy's not around. Usually you could cut like maybe one and a little bit. You cut like one buggy and drop a buggy to a biker unit, and I think like you unlock enough points for it. But he's left at home today, which is probably fine. So that's cool. It is nice to see these style of lists coming back out of the woodwork. I don't know how secondaries changed well enough for orcs to know if they got good secondaries for this style of list to play. Lyle, 5th round opponent ATC accidentally offered to pair rack spam with no liquefiers into Tau. Yeah, that one. That was the matchup that was like keeping the Drukhari Army of Renown like from being ridiculous for a really long time, because they would just like hit a good Tau list and just everyone died. I'm just gonna move over my thing here, chat, so we can see the list a little bit better. And I know you're playing bombers, right, Lyle? So yeah, that would have been brutal. Especially no liquefiers, because they're always like Rax and Grotesques, right? They like moved away from Talos and Chronos, so there's just no flying whatsoever. So just bombers just get to do loop-de-loops around their list. Oh no! As every time I think about playing aircraft, like I have sort of a existential. I'm like existentially terrified of putting aircraft in my own list, because like for every matchup where you can run around the table like that, there's a matchup where your opponent just like wins the coin flip and kills all your aircraft on the first turn. But like it's probably more often than you hit the list where aircraft just do whatever they want. Oh, couldn't play the bombers for ATC? Yeah, I mean it's probably fine, to be fair, chat. I don't think you need those. It's Charles Morrow is the Tyranids on July 9th. So is that one in here? Oh yeah. Oh, it's this same list, actually. The same event. Oh. It was just the second 5-0, because they had 2 in this event, rather than number 1. So this one actually has a big Termagant brick, rather than just using the little Termagant units. It's Neurothrope with Resonance Barb, seems fine. Turbogon with Maw Claws, Heightened Senses. And that one is Fight First, and there's a second ability I forget. Oh, Fight First and reroll hits. Okay, so it's full rerolls. And I think for the way that the Turbogon wants to play, having a defensive Warlord trait like that makes a ton of sense. I think it's kind of like putting a lot of pressure on that Termagant brick, though, to survive. and it's not in Crack or in Leviathan. If we were in Leviathan, I'd feel okay about this Termagants, because you can like pass a 5+ invuln save to them, and you can only be wounded on 2s and stuff. But like, have we truly yet moved past the point where 30 Termagants doesn't just immediately turn into vapor? I'm not sure we have. So I'm a little bit worried about that Turbogon. Although, to be fair, there's like it is exactly as hard to kill as any other Turbogon. I guess the downside is that we're taking the rerolls instead of adaptive biology, which I would really like to take. Also, interestingly, there's no Hive Tyrant here, right? Yeah, there's just no Hive Tyrant. Okay. Huh. All right. There are double Venom Thropes, so we do have 2 ways to project -1 to hit onto the Termagants, which is okay. We have Warriors, which can trade because we're playing High Fleet Kraken. And then triple Tyrannofex. This list is so weird. This feels like a... I don't know. This feels like either like a Leviathan list that accidentally got submitted as Kraken or something. Like, we're playing Kraken for the big advances on the Termagants and Warriors, so we can like project objective secured really far. But we're not compounding the hit penalties, and we have no rerolls available for the Tyrannofexes. So they're just sort of like throwing shit at the wind. I also wonder what the terrain looks like, because every time I see more than one Rupture Cannon Tyrannofex, I'm like, what are we doing with those tables? I guess we could look it up, right? It was called Coastal Wargaming? I wonder if we can find some pictures. Here it is on Facebook. We found some pictures. Move my screen over so we can see. So the terrain, I guess, yeah, this is just the Warp Charge Gaming terrain for the most part. The terrain looks pretty heavy. Yeah, this is not a terrain layout that I would expect Rupture Cannon Tyrannofexes to excel at, to be honest, chat. Because generally speaking, you can hide your army in, impactful places of the table. So you don't actually have to get shot by those guys. I guess, like, this line is kind of open, but it depends on the deployment, right? Like, maybe you have a shot here, but probably it's unlikely. This terrain's cool, though, by the way, chat. I would love to play on these tables. I always appreciate when a TO like goes out of their way to make the terrain like look cool and be super functional, because it's definitely possible, and it doesn't have to be like realistic looking. Like, these are clearly like just very gamified ruins, but they look great. They fit the theme of the tables and everything. Did we look at the Arch City Necron list? I think we did. That was not OBSEC Dynasty. I think we did look at it, but we'll take a look. Another quick look. Yeah, so like the triple rupture cannons is throwing me, chat. That's the weird part in my experience, in my opinion. But otherwise, this seems pretty okay. The other option is, like, the other buff that you have for High Fleet Kraken is you can also just, like, chuck the Turrigan people. Go get them, buddy! And we are taking, like, it looks like it's just regular Kraken adaptation. And we haven't specified a swap. So everything advances D3 plus 3, which is pretty good for all of the Termagants that we were running. Huh. Well, interesting stuff. There's also there's like no direct guidance either. This is a weird list. All right, let's look at some Arch City. So this was Joe Cottrell playing Novak, so we're meleeing. Oh no, my thing got moved again. What the fuck? Oh, because I moved it for Facebook. That's my bad. Doubles Corpex Destroyer, 60 flayed ones. Oh, that's classic. That's the classic Novak build. Yeah, that's pretty cool. We saw that a little bit like pre-Nephilim, post-Night, like at the end of Nakmund, right? And then we have the Locust Destroyers to be a ranged threat, and then just throwing a billion flayed ones at people. Yeah. Seems pretty solid. And especially if you're like, if you're putting so much pressure on people, I bet the Necron secondaries are actually pretty good, even though you don't have objectives secured to confirm them. Like your opponent has to screen out just endless flayed ones, and you're like threatening a Veil of Darkness, which is on the Technomancer, yeah, both with the melee units and with the range units. So your opponent has to screen out like the entire table, which just gives you really good charges for your ground stuff, and then that lets you like purge the vermin really easily. That's pretty cool. I could see that. I don't know. I could see that going very poorly very quickly, though, to be fair, too. Because it also gives up, like, huge, like, enormous no prisoners. But, I don't know. Novak flayed ones are pretty scary. Because they're exploding sixes, and then you're a +1 attack from Novak, and then you throw rerolls from Silent King, and my will be done. In melee. So, like... And you can... I guess he posted Hungering Void was locked in. And I guess you don't want to, like, just post Conquering Tyrant forever. But Conquering Tyrant's really good because it extends the Silent King reroll Wounds Aura to 9 inches. So he actually affects... He can affect, like, most of the board from the center of the table. Which is pretty cool. I don't know. That list seems sick. It's cool to see. At least one not full OBSEC Necron list. And then we'd be remiss if we didn't look at our very own from the chat here, Lyle Dixon's list, 5-0 at Arch City. Congratulations, by the way, buddy. That's super awesome. And I know you said that this list was being superseded by bombers, but we can talk about it anyway. We got Tau Sept. We got a Precision of the Hunter Cold Star Commander. Hell yeah. Mr. Longstrike. No Warlord trade on Longstrike. Probably not. You don't need to spend on it, but it is okay. First 5-0. Congratulations, dude. That's awesome. We have the 2 Crisis Battlesuit teams. Airbursting Fragmentation. Airbursting Fragmentation still. I love it. That's great. Fusion Blasters. Plasma Rifles plus Psychic Ion. 1 unit Vespid to do Retrieve Nephilim. 1 Hammerhead. Love it. 2nd Patrol. Commander in Crisis plus Aunva. Man, Aunva versus the Humble Staff dude is such an interesting consideration. When I was building my list that I played one time and haven't gotten back to yet, which felt bad, I ended up just, I think, playing the Ethereal with no Humble Stick because I didn't want to spend the extra points on Aunva, basically. And I wanted more sync for marker drones, basically. 5 AFP with Longstrike and Shadow Sun target lock still does work. Yeah, so target lock to ignore cover. Long strike gives them +1 to hit with a marker light. But there's no warlord trait on long strike, right? So is there S3 boldness victory in this list? There's not, right? Because that's a combo I can get behind. That combo is sick. Just full rerolls on that unit, and they're like, hey, we're just fishing for 6s here. Like, it doesn't matter how -1 to hit. We're just fishing for 6s to hit automatic so that we get auto wounds anyway. I do actually really like that wombo combo. I played against it one time, and I was like, this sucks. I hate it. I think a unit of... it was pre-nerf Crisis Battlesuits, but they did shoot like a 9 damage into a high duel or something with AFPs. It's like, please never do that again. But do you like Aunva, Lyle? Tell me about Aunva. I mean, Aunva's sweet, right? Because he's literally just an ethereal with Humble Save built in, but he costs more and then can't take drones. Yeah. I guess the other consideration when I was building tile lists is that I wasn't taking Crisis Battlesuit teams. So I didn't care about the core keyworded stuff. So getting the +1 for the second and the second cast didn't matter to me. So actually Unbot makes a ton of sense. I forgot that those are like the only core that remain in that army. Because Breachers is always starting transport, so they don't ever get targeted anyway. All right. Is there any other list that we want to talk about, chat? I guess we should talk about a little bit of Adeptus Sororitas, because I think if I were to create a power ranking right now, gun to my head, if I were to pick the best factions in the game, I think Necrons would be the top 3, and I'm not sure what the order is yet. I think would be Necrons, Sororitas, and Tyranids probably. Tau is like down there somewhere. Apparently Death Guard is there, but I'm not sure what they're doing quite yet. And I like some variety of Space Marines, maybe, and like Craft Worlds are kind of in the mix. Maybe Imperial Knights. I guess like once we get off the top 5 or so, it's like pretty wide open. So let's look at Adeptus Sororitas lists. I have to imagine that these mostly look the same. Yeah. So Bloody Rose, so we get access to the entire supplement. A Mantle of Ophelia, Word of the Emperor Canoness. With Blazing Ire for rerolls. A Missionary's Course of Spiritual Fortitude. Gotta have that. Morvenn Vahl with her Warlord trait. Interesting. Double Battle Sisters, Sister Novitiates. Novitiates, by the way, I'm excited for Thursday because we get to watch Skilord versus Salad in an Invitational. And Skilord bringing 60 Novitiates, I think. And, man, they... For 8.5 points a model in Bloody Rose, they freaking slap. The base Novitiates get like 4 attacks apiece in Bloody Rose, because I believe they have Shock Assault. Their weapon gives them an attack, and then the Bloody Rose bonus gives them an attack on the charge. They're only like strength 4, but with +1 AP is like okay, or I guess +2 AP, so they actually punch your armor contempt a little bit, right? Actually. Is their base weapon like AP1? It's not, right? Yeah, no, it's just strength 4. So they just get to AP1. So their AP kind of sucks, but it is what it is. That's what you have Celestian Sacrosants for, because apparently we're taking 2 units of those, an 8 and a 9. 2 units of Sister Repentia, Classic, Triple Zephyrum. That's, I think, where Sororitas lists are moving right now, because Zephyrum got a points cut. To the triple Zephyrum build, and then double Retributors with Rhinos. So you can use the Rhino pregame move from Bloody Rose and drop off. We have a bolt gun on the Superior, Heavy Flamer on the on one of them, and then 3 multi-meltas. So you can Armorium Cherub, whichever one you want, whether you need the Flamer or the multi-melta to double tap to kill whatever you need to. And you have access to Holy Trinity, so you can get +1 to wound. Good stuff. And then the other list here that's 5-0. 2 lists went 5-0. Also Bloody Rose. Also Canoness. This one with a Relic Blade, Word of the Emperor. No Warlord trait. Morvenn with no Warlord trait. Hospitaller with Indomitable Belief. Is that the invulnerable save buff? It is the invulnerable save buff. I nailed it. +1 invuln save to core infantry within 6. Sick. And then here come the novitiates. 20 novitiates this time. 15 sacrosants, or 14 sacrosants. 14 sisters repentia. Triple Zephyrim. This is less hard than the Zephyrim, but all very similar builds in Retributors. This one has a big unit, so probably a ground unit that's going to start on the table. And then we have a Hospitaller combo in here, so that if the unit that starts on the table gets shot, you can... I kind of like this play pattern where you run the Retributor squad out of cover, you make its attacks with it, but you leave all of the bolt gun sisters in cover, and then you take saves on the models with the meltas, and they die, and then the Hospitaller regenerates them, and you get to use a cherub again. Didn't take 2 cherubs, only spent for the 1 cherub, but it does get you a second activation out of the Retributor squad, and that usually is enough to like get big dividends. But I think Bloody Rose is generally where we're going. Although, man, Ash C is showing us up in the Invitational with Valorous Heart, Robots, Robo-Nuns, Beep Boop. Because that list looks totally unstoppable right now. After our game from last night against Devon Swan. Poor Thousand Suns just got rolled into a little tiny ball and squished. Poor guys. Gonna play 1,250 points Friday using first time using Krieg. How does Double Marshal Tank Commander 6 infantry? Like 6 individual infantry squads? 3 quad launchers, 2 Lehman Rusts? Feels like a lot of infantry, to be fair, for 1,250. I want to be honest. Although, at 1,250, like, sometimes you can out-skew people. So they just don't have the volume to kill all your stuff. So the infantry, like, double moving to objectives and then backing up the tank commanders is probably okay. I think that's probably fine. I don't know if you need double Marshal. You could maybe cut one and then turn a Lehman Russ into a second tank commander. I sort of don't hate. Because usually you're just double moving like a single unit. And then you can pulse, like the double moves pulse anyway. So I don't know if I've run into a situation where an Astra Militarum player has like a ton of orders and really needs them all, especially with like the order chaining they do now. So, I don't know. But yeah, that list seems pretty okay. One thing, if you play Deathcore of Krieg, if you're like all in on Deathcore of Krieg, the thing that I was shown by my local community, which I very much appreciate, is that you should certainly not be sleeping on Deathcore Grenadiers. Let me find their data sheet real quick here. So if you're like looking for a way to expand, this is sort of like I would be pushing for like a combo like this. They are elites. Oh, combat engineers, not grenadiers. Excuse me, chat. Yeah, but the combat engineer squads are like sort of wild. Here we go. Ta-da. They're just a veteran profile, so they have a Carapace armor save and ballistic skill 3 for 8 points model. But then the important thing here is that they have a 6-inch D6 grenade that's 2+ poison. So it's AP2. So it punches through Armor of Contempt. It wounds like even T5 stuff, like Gravis armored stuff, Adeptus Custodes, works all that stuff on 2s. It just like bones Tyranids super hard. AP2, 2+ poison is like the perfect profile. It gets a little stifled by like Leviathan, but that's fine. Like even just the equivalent of strength 5 AP2 and like high volume is really good. And then you can use the Grenadier strat to full throw with the entire unit. So you throw 10 D6, 2+ poison AP2 grenades at people for 80 points. 80 points for 10 of them. It's so good. Plus you like you can put them in chimeras and their threat range is like relatively solid. So like 1 or 2 of those units just has like this little counterpunch and your army is like super cool. You've got 20 Grenadiers of Proxy Scions and then 20 Engineers that aren't assembled yet. Perfect. Yeah, just get you some chimeras, I think. It's be like the only difference, so that you can actually deliver them. But yeah, those guys are like super duper good. Yeah, I played against them. I had the misfortune of playing against them, or I guess the fortune, because it showed me the combo in the days of Crusher Stampede, and they one-shot Hive Tyrant. And I was a little sad. The Hive Tyrant came in and just was like, "What's up, dudes?" And then just got turned into soup by the gas bombs. Which was not great for me. I think it had failed to kill Lieben Russ, and so it like didn't overrun away. And the Grenadiers are like, "Oh, we have a present for you, buddy." But like the threat range out of a transport's not too bad, right? Because they move 6 out of the transport and throw 6, so 9 inches off a transport. So it's 15 off of a Chimera that can place relatively far forward. So it's probably okay. Anyway, that's my thoughts about that. I think we've talked about all the lists, chat. That's what we got going on. Definitely we're starting to see a meta form, but it definitely feels still relatively unstable. Tyranids still doing pretty well. This Death Guard overperformance this week, over the last 2 weeks, I guess, is what's really throwing me. That's like sending me super hard. And I'd be curious to see whether or not we see that in the future. We also said, I guess maybe it's too early yet, but basically no Heretic Astartes. There's just nothing. Just crickets from the Heretic Astartes camp right now. And it may be that the army's like too straightforward. It just plays too fair. Also, shout out in last week to Matt Watson with Genestealer Cult 4-on-1. Which is super sick. Big hybrid brick. And then a ton of little hybrid units. I bet... yeah, plus we have Pure Strain Genestealers for the Alpha Strike, Ridge Runners for range shooting, pew pew, and Goliath Ruck Runner, bunch of Adeline Jackals. I bet Genestealer Cults are actually kind of poised to do pretty okay because nothing really changed for them, and but their access to secondaries is still really strong, and like that was always the biggest benefit of the sub faction and. Or of the faction, and that they in 8th edition even, that's why, or in early 9th, they got taken alongside Tyranids a lot, just so you had access to things like Retrieve Knockman data really easily, especially once they stopped lictors from being able to do it. That was really easy, but at least Genestealer Cult, it's like you can oftentimes just like lock in a Retrieve Nephilim and then like the Brood Surge, I think is the Genestealer Cult specific one. And then like play a Psychic Interrogate or something as your last one because their Psychers are pretty good too. And then that feels pretty strong. So I bet Genestealer Cult don't look too bad after it. Hexcole, glad no one's playing Heretic Astartes. Makes you feel like a special CSM flake. Secondary game for CSM is not that good. Yeah, I can see that for sure. Or secondary game for GSC is not that good? Is it really? Let's look at their secondary objectives real quick. Genestealer Cults. Found it. Save us, friends. So Battlefield Supremacy, yeah, so they still have Brood Swarm. Score 1 victory point for having more models on the battlefield than your opponent does. Probably don't get that one, to be fair. Until you've killed a lot of them, and then you do. More models in your opponent's deployment zone than your opponent does. More models in your own deployment zone than your opponent does. That one's easy. You probably get that one for free. More models in no man's land than your opponent does. And this is end of your turn, so you've already killed all their stuff in no man's land. So you probably it's an easy 2 and a situational 3, which is the same or better than engage. So it's like, I guess it's a sideways. It's a side grade for the most part. Their purge is kill an enemy unit with a crossfire marker, 2 points. If you kill someone with someone setting up from ambush. 2 points if you kill an exposed target. Which is probably fine, right? Because you're trying to set those up anyway. It doesn't feel high scoring, but it definitely feels like, especially setting up from ambush, is like kind of your whole deal. Yeah, obviously you can only do that a couple of turns per game, so I guess it's maybe a 10er, it feels like. Yeah, maybe their secondary game is not perfect. But I think between those and having like almost an automatic retrieve Nephilim data, I think they're probably above average in terms of secondaries. Is what it feels like to me. Plus, like, you can lock in a psychic interrogation if their anti-psyker's not super strong. They don't have like the same level of psychic that like Tyranids have, or Ulthway or something, or Eldar. But I think they're just fine at it. They have a lot of like incidental psychers, especially because like their patriarchs are psychers, and those guys usually tend to play kind of mid-board so that you have good outlets for interrogation. So you have like that locked in. You probably have a Shadow Op secondary locked in, and then you can pick between like one of the other ones. That is a seriously above average level of secondary objectives. I can tell it's not like the best thing ever, right? You're not like, you don't have like, I mean, it's not Necrons where you can just take all three and you just like automatically 30 them, but if Necrons get knocked down a peg, then that'll be fine. Oh, we did have a Chaos Space Marine list, 5-0 here. Midsummer OPA. I think this is a 22-player event, so it was a little bit small. And it was Iron Warriors. So Iron Warriors is now ignore cover, no rerolls, I believe. I played against them on stream once. Double Forge Fiends, that's cool. A unit of Obliterators. I don't know if there's remaining any synergy between Iron Warriors and Obliterators. I don't know enough about the sub-faction, so I do apologize, chat. 1 Hellbrute, Master of Executions, the Big Chaos Terminator Squad, Mark of Slanesh, Black Ruin Damnation, so we're -1 to wound, no wound rerolls. Mark of Slanesh, so you can get Delightful Agonized, right? No, I guess not. We're just fighting first. That's also probably fine. And then Pact of Flesh so we can regenerate those dudes. We have a Prescience on a supporting Legionary squad with the Balefire Tome, so they become a Psyker. And then double Venom Crawler to buff the casters. And yeah, seems like a list. There's no Apostle. Oh, there is a Mark of Slanesh MOP. Do they? I don't know if the cult specific psychic powers unlock automatically if you take that mark. If so, then we would have access to a 5-up ignore. Interesting. Good stuff. All right. Well, there it is. We talked about a Chaos Space Marine list. Yeah, the Apostle's super sick. Yeah, I imagine it's just we're just out of HQ slots, right? You'd have to pony up the CP for another detachment. Because like the double MOPs gives you one guy to psychic interrogate because he's like +3 to cast once he stabs a dude. The other guy casts the buff spells. The Lord Discordant is just a god made manifest in like corrupted metal and flesh. And then so like what do you can't cut anything. So you'd have to take like a auxiliary maybe to fit in the Apostle, which feels super bad. Or you try to take a patrol, or you cut it to double patrol, I guess, and you pay CCP. Yeah, that's probably what you would do. Yeah, there's enough slots to cut it to 2 patrols, but it's like really awkward. Oh, if you have the mark, you know the power. Okay, sick. If GW made your second detachment free, the game would be in such a good place for Cyclist builds. Yeah, honestly, like I feel like they should just pick one or the other. Like. Either you have infinite slots and can do anything you want, or you can only play 1 detachment. Just pick one. Just pick one of the 2. Master of Executions also slaps for sure, chat. 100%. Yeah, if you were gonna take like Patrol plus Battalion, that's probably where your other pick would go. Although like the Demon Princes are pretty strong too. I don't know. There's so many cool Smash character builds in Chaos Space Marines right now. It's tough to figure out what you need. But because Masters of Possession are like so like sort of low key busted, I think like the MOPs and the Dark Apostles are like just sort of insane-o strong. It's hard to fit all of slots for all of the extra dudes in there. Although the Executions is see, he's not HQ, right? He's Elites, I think. Oh no, he's in there actually, chat. Just kidding. He's just right there. Just play Unbound Armies. Yeah. That's embarrassing. I just totally missed he's actually just in the list. I'm talking about how difficult it is to fit him in, and this dude's just like, I brought one. He's right here, dude. All right, chat. Clearly I'm mildly delirious. The sleep deprivation's getting to me. As a note, I'm going to wrap things up here real quick. As I said at the top of the video, go check out my shorts, please. I would really like to keep doing them if people like them, so do that. Go hang out with those little videos. I've also been posting them on TikTok. There's my TikTok's in the video description, and it's been like sort of low-key blowing up, which has been cool. So it may be that I just move all my short content there, because it's, I mean, there's like no reason not to put it on YouTube, I guess, but it's just, I don't know, I've been kind of pooping the bed on YouTube. But it's been blowing up on TikTok, so that's cool. I'm gonna be a TikTok star, and all the tweens are gonna be my friends. Finally, I'll be cool. And I had something else to say. Oh, and I'll be live on Twitch tomorrow. We have a T5S2 game scheduled for Thursday, but I'm not sure when it's going to be. And then we have 2 games scheduled this Sunday. So come hang out on Sunday. We're going to play a friggin' metric butt ton of competitive 40k. That's going to mostly round out the remainder of round 1. So we're going to cut to the top 4 for the T5S2 Invitational. And then next weekend, that being the 30th and 31st, we're going to be playing those people against each other. There will be a list break next week. So invitational lists may change. Mostly because of the 2-inch engagement rule, which has been bad, but we wanted people to give people the opportunity to change their lists if the rules did change there. But there hasn't been any talk of a change to that rule yet, so who knows what's going on with that thing. Anyway, I'm going to pop off now and hopefully not die, and I will see you later. So thanks for coming and hanging out with me and tuning in.